welcome to Gay on Purpose podcast. My name is David DeVore. Join me for deep dive conversations with quite a variety of gay men about some of the unique challenges of gay life that we don't normally talk about, and how those challenges can be the pathway to powerful gifts. This is not an interview. I am just having a conversation with you. And it's so funny because this morning when I woke up, I was thinking about you, and I was thinking about the fact that you were one of the very first people that I came out to 40 years ago is when I met you.
I can't believe it's
Isn't that crazy?
40 years. That's insane. That's insane.
I know. And I was really, it's interesting when I think about you and I think about that time in college in my life and how afraid I was to come out. And a lot of the guys that I work with are in the process of coming out. And it really, my heart kind of was opening this morning thinking about the pain of making that decision. Like, I remember thinking of it as like, I'm going to dive off the high board and there's no turning back.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that in the beginning for me, when I met you, you may have known that I was identifying as bisexual, which for me was transitionary. Like I was never bisexual, but I wasn't sure what was happening. Did you ever have a phase like that where you thought that you might be bisexual or you weren't sure what was happening?
I mean, when people told me they were bisexual, I was always like, no, they're gay. There was no bisexual in my life.
That's common with gay men that we often use. Like, oh, we know that you're in a transition. Although you know that there really are bisexual people.
Oh, 100%. And that's different in this world 40 years later. I mean, it's a completely different game, I think, now. And it's beautiful. It's all different, like all of the facets and all the subtle colors of all of sexuality, for me, it wasn't that way. For me, it was knowing I was different, growing up as an only child and not having any reference points, not having anything on TV, no radio. I mean, the only thing I listened to was like high school, Dr. Ruth on Sunday nights, I remember listening to her like with my covers pulled up underneath my neck, waiting for the segment for them to talk about somebody calling in being gay, I remember holding my breath. So I think that I identify with that idea of like making that jump forward, diving off the cliff of like, I can't breathe. I'm going to make this decision to really come out with this information. But for me, it was so back and forth. And thank God theater school provided a safe space to explore all of that, where we got to explore so much, and it was like a container. Whereas, and for me, my story was that, I chose that state school to go to. I didn't know I was going to major in theater right away. And I was rushing fraternities, and I was finding I was so stressed out because I was in the pattern of, at the time, drinking with everybody and getting into those drunk cathartic moments of like telling one or two of your friends on your floor, that you're rushing a fraternity with, that you think you might be gay in a drunken like mess, and they're like, no, you're not. We know you're not. You're like, no, I really am, and this is so painful.
I really want to kiss you.
I know. Really 100%. Like I can't stop thinking about kissing you, and I hope you would just let me do that. But you guys are just like, no, you're not. And so I ran to the theater department and started pledging a fraternity, and it saved my life because we got to explore so much through material, through our movement, through voice, through touch. We learned how to caress. We learned how to there were so many things in our movement class that just allowed me to break out of I was frozen and isolated for so many years. So I totally identify with that and where you were coming from. And I would think at that time, I totally understood how hard it was for you,
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think that it can be expressed enough how scary it can feel to make that decision to accept who you are and to come out with it, because the stakes feel incredibly high. Like you could lose everybody. And it's interesting that you would say that about the theater department, because when I got involved with the theater department at ISU, that's when I really started to feel comfortable, because there were such a wide variety of artists and people who were expressing themselves in different ways, and there were gay people, and there were, it was cool to be gay. It felt like it was sort of a cool thing. And I had the same experience with the fraternity. I didn't rush, but I went to some of the parties in the beginning. And I remember Gene Scharfenberg, somebody saying, it was like everybody was like anti fraternity, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense because of the homogeny that's fostered in fraternities. And as artists, they're trying to get you to nurture your individuality and who you are, and being able to express that. And I think that, and I've never thought about this before, but I think that acting classes and being in that environment really helped me to turn inward and to learn more about myself than I'd ever learned. I otherwise might have just marched down the path of trying to be like everybody else a little bit in the world, and not felt called to be more of an individual. And I'm really grateful for that, actually.
I
Now that
am
I think
too.
about it.
I agree. I think theater saved my life. And I would agree, it definitely allowed us to explore our individuality when we didn't know who we were. And we had representations of all different types of people around us that were very different from us, that almost
Yes.
gave you the permission or the excuse to be a freak, go far, like
Yeah.
explore your light, explore your dark, explore your masculine and your feminine. And I'm not saying you don't get that from a fraternity. I don't know because I've never lived that experience, but I think there is a culture of a little bit of homophobia and like conforming and even hazing. And it's hard
Yes.
to,
A
and
lot of
that may have
homophobia.
changed now. And it may have changed now. Again, we're talking 40 years later. And I
Yep.
think there's a lot of there's a different like conversation now, right? Because it's completely different, but it was hard to even like, I think even I would say for myself and my generation, like just coming out and then having to declare like I'm gay and sticking to it because it was so hard
Yeah.
to not be that for so many years, didn't even give
Yep.
me the permission to be bisexual or to explore women and to be like, you know what, I like all of it. Or like, none of it's a big deal. Like it's not, this doesn't define who I am. I'm a creative person. I'm empathic. I'm an individual, like all of those other things that are more important than I'm not just my sexuality. And I think being that young, it felt like it was so, especially when coming out, it was all about sexuality. It was really having to
Right.
get clear on that, and
Yeah.
declare that and to try to kind of come up with an identity because I think I was
Right.
so used to hiding and being this like chameleon,
Mm-hmm.
and used to being what everybody I thought wanted me to be or what I thought people wanted me to be. It was a survival skill to not get made
Yep.
fun of and not to get hazed
Exactly.
and not to get bullied or beat up, even though there was some of that. I was pretty
Yeah.
fortunate, but I tried to use humor. Humor was always my defense. Humor was always like a way to get in with the people I thought might be dangerous to me.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. The funny person in the
Yeah.
room. It's funny because the other guys that I've been talking to lately have said that that is how they survived, was their sense of humor. And in fact,
Yeah.
I just talked to somebody today who said that he could annihilate someone with language, that he could just really, put it out there, and people were afraid of him. He was this really little guy, but they were afraid of him because they knew that
Oh,
he could make fun of them in a way that would just slay them. And so
well,
he
that's
used that
interesting.
to
Yeah.
protect himself.
No, that's super interesting. Me too, as well. Being a tiny guy, I directed it against myself. It became
Yeah.
self-deprecating, and I figured
Right.
if I could make fun of myself first, nobody else could.
Right.
And
Right.
so it kind of like, I kind of let them in on the joke, right? But at the same time, I was doing myself some damage. And I think a lot of
Exactly.
self-deprecating humor can be really damaging. And then you have to
Oh,
work your way out of
definitely.
that and pray and learn how to accept yourself and love yourself. And that, making fun of yourself can be the meanest. Like we all can make fun of ourselves and laugh at ourselves in the light, but I think you can go real close to the bone with it, and it can be pretty damaging as well too, emotionally.
Yeah. You do you feel like there are still remnants of that exist within your consciousness just from being in that pattern when you were younger?
Yeah, I remember it. I see it in others now. I see it in other people who are struggling and they're really hard on themselves, or they put themselves down, or they call themselves fat or ugly. And I'm just like, it hurts to hear somebody else say that about themselves. Like I feel
Yeah.
it. I'm more empathic about it, empathetic, and it reminds me of maybe some of the things that I said about myself, but it also kind of checks me to be like, okay, am I still doing that? Because I don't
Yeah.
enjoy it anymore. I love feeling good
Oh,
now. And and as I
me
get
too.
older, I didn't think at 57 I would be saying these things. A lot of these changes have been recent. It's taken me my whole life to
Hmm.
really be like, I like myself a lot. I love myself. I'm enough. I want to enjoy my life. And yeah,
Yeah.
I don't need to be standing in my own way, of that.
Right.
So,
Exactly. That's so true, John. And it is a lifelong journey. That comes up a lot because I know that when I first was getting into my healing path and becoming aware of my internalized homophobia and shame and all the stuff that happened in childhood that I was in denial of, that I was pretending everything was okay because that was my survival strategy, that I made a realization, that how much harm it had done to me and how much I had become such a good actor in pretending that
mhm.
everything was okay, that I couldn't, I convinced myself that it was. There could be no monkey in the closet,
Yeah.
no
Oh
elephant in the
yeah.
closet. That couldn't exist in my world because as I was kind of like running through my life and not looking back, I was like, this is the game plan. This is how we're doing it. And, the mask is set and here we go. And getting older. And one of the beautiful things about growing older, especially as a gay man, is just peeling back those masks and just being like, it really is okay to be vulnerable. It really is okay to just show up as I am and not have to pretend and not have to dress a certain way or be a certain way, even within the fraternity of homosexuality, even within being in the gay community. Do you find that you're becoming more liberated as you get older in terms of who you are and presenting and all of that?
100%. I think like I said, I was pretty frozen. I was really good at disassociating um,
Mhm.
when I was younger, and it became clinical. It became clinical. I had a really dark time and a depression, and I didn't have access to my emotions. I didn't know what my emotions were. I didn't. It was all in my head, so I would spin out. And now I feel like I feel everything. I feel so much more than I used to feel, and I'm discovering new emotions or new ways of connecting with people that is so satisfying on an honest level, like just being honest with people about how you feel. That's new, and being vulnerable, showing that side. And then it's remarkable to see what happens when you're vulnerable with somebody, they're vulnerable back, and you
It
just feel
just
so
opens them up.
it's a much more full experience. And we realize usually, like, again, everything that I say is from my own perspective. I don't want to generalize for anybody, but for
Yeah.
me, um, I think I've discovered that we're more alike than we are not alike. And the more you can open up and set, I could think this is kind of what I focus on now when I'm with people intimately, or as a friend, or just saying, listen, creating a safe space is the most important thing for them to be themselves so that they can be heard. And that's enough. That's just really more than enough. And
Yeah.
just meeting them at that point of being honest and vulnerable. I still have issues with trying to fix things or trying to help people, but just that beginning part is enough. Just creating a safe space for people to be themselves and to be heard is more than enough.
Right, exactly. And you know what I've discovered as I've gotten older and I'm getting to know somebody for the first time, and because I've been more in the practice of vulnerability and recognizing how powerful it is, I also recognize that it's what I want in relationships from other people. So it's almost like a little test. If I just jump in and I go into the deep lane and
Yeah.
just to see what happens, it sometimes is an indication of whether I would like to get to know this person more or not, depending on what their response
Yeah.
is to that.
Oh
And it used
yeah.
to be
It's a
something
great
that
gauge.
I was completely terrified of. And now I think of it as like a powerful thing. Like, you know, it, I don't like having superficial conversation. I don't like having to do that small talk. What do you do? Just talking about, I want to talk about what's happening. I want to talk about what's happening in your
Yeah.
heart and what you feel. And I find it more and less acceptable to me as I've gotten older, in developing friends and dates and going on dates.
I agree. I think a lot of that changed. I don't know if it changed with my age or COVID happening at my age, but I feel like The way people connected changed. And like, I didn't spend much time on Scruff. I didn't like Scruff. I hated it. I just hated it, but I figured this is the only way I'm going to be able to meet people. But when I
Yeah.
kind of changed from my profile to the things that I really like things that I value, like honesty and communication and sensuality and vulnerability, I had attracted a totally different type of guy in my life,
Yeah.
who wanted to cuddle and love kissing. And like, I don't ever remember having those conversations with men ever. I was afraid,
Right.
of that. And I embrace it now. Now it's like a love language. And it's like, yes, touch is important to me. All of this is important to me. What's important to you? Finding out from people, even though we may not be a match, at least bringing them up, elevating them a bit, and I think is important. And
Yeah.
being kind to people, because you never really know what people are going through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that it's interesting, and we were just talking about this the other day, that sex as a gay man for me is getting better as I've gotten older because I'm not, I'm engaging, I'm connecting. And I think that coming from a place of fear and secrecy and shame and quick sexual experiences because we might get caught, or there was fear, it's sort of a, let's make this happen fast. And I think sometimes within the gay culture, sexual experiences are lacking that kind of connection out of fear and shame, where it's like, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, and we're done. And when I was younger, I thought that that's what it was. That's what sex was with men. And then as I got older, and this has taken me until now. I'm 57 years old. I think we were talking about this, where I actually tell
Yeah.
people like, I need connection. I don't want to have
Yeah.
sex right away. I want to. I don't want to have an agenda, a sexual agenda. And because a lot of us learned about our sexuality and learned about gay sex through porn, there's also that element of like it being very performative and
Yeah.
non-connecting and
Yeah.
non-vulnerable and non-sensual. Just really like, rough Tom of Finland, guys pounding each other and just,
Right.
it not being, and I always felt like I was a misfit in the gay community because I couldn't get it. Like it didn't work for me. Like I couldn't get erect with somebody who I'm not connecting with. I can't, it doesn't work for me. And it's taken me such a long time to, instead of bearing with it and trying to make it happen, to say, no, you're not the right person for me. I need somebody different. And like you said, when you raise your vibration, you start to ask for what you want, that you want connection, that you want to cuddle, that you want to go on dates, you want to walk and hold hands, you want to do these romantic things and get to know somebody and connect. It's really powerful because those people do come along and the other ones can just go by and it's okay.
Absolutely. And no one taught us how to use the app. So I don't want to get too much into judgment about quick sex or quick hookups. It's not right for me. I think letting people
Yeah.
know it's not right for me is me communicating that this is probably going to be a waste of time. So please don't start with, looking bottom, top, like those questions. Like, let's find out who we are. Let's connect.
Yeah.
I'm
It
looking
can feel,
for, yeah, I'm looking for intimacy,
and it
and
can
if
feel
that
so
scares you,
remedial
yeah, and if that
and
scares you, that's
really
cool. Like,
animalistic.
but yeah, but like, I'm also up for the time of feeling crazy sex. We can build to that.
Yeah.
If there's chemistry and if there's a connection. But I think taking the pressure off, I always tell people like, or potential sex partners, like, you know, this is what I would like. I'd like to cuddle. I would like to kiss. Let's see what his energy is like. And if it
Yeah.
goes more from there, everything else is a bonus. Let's take the pressure off of performance. I think that takes the anxiety out for everybody. And I've talked, and even after, guys have said the same thing, like, God, I'm so glad, like, they didn't feel like they had to perform. It just, let's see what unfolds organically. And if we don't
Hmm.
do it all in this first time of meeting, maybe the second or third time, if we want to continue that. I think it's really healthy to have those conversations. I also think, like, you said some things before that kind of reminded me of the quickness of it. I think because it was done in secrecy. And
Hmm.
especially for me, it was always done in secrecy. I was afraid someone's going to find out. So then there's no joy in enjoying the experience afterwards.
Right.
there's some fear around it or guilt, like I shouldn't really be enjoying this because this is a dirty secret. And now
Exactly.
I love it. Now I love it. Now I love taking time afterwards and, spending time afterwards there, no one's running out the door. We're cuddling and laughing and talking, having food
Oh, I
afterwards.
love
It's like,
that.
you process a little bit of it. It's not like a therapy session, but it really is. Like it's like,
Yeah.
you feel really
Getting to
good,
know
and
somebody.
and and you like you've. I always set an intention before is to create a safe space, to elevate each other's energy and to connect. And then with each specific person, it's like, oh, and this, might want to add this to that. But if it doesn't happen, I'm not attached to it. And it usually
Right.
does happen. That's what's remarkable. It's like when you set an intention, it
Yeah.
like blows your mind. You manifest that. You really
Right.
do. And if
Because
you,
you're creating it in your energy. You're
you,
doing it. You actually are,
yeah,
you're creating it. You are putting the steps in motion to get what you want. You're engaging in with your intention, with your energy, with your words, with the way that you are physical, and you're giving them permission to join you there. And I
yeah,
think that there is a defensiveness with a lot of gay men where it's sort of like, within the gay community, gay men tend to be really hard on each other. Like, you hear gay men all the time saying like,
oh
gay
yeah,
men suck. So gay men are terrible.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
not to be trusted. Nobody can be trusted. And, sort of living in, the toxicity of all of that. And then that becoming more and more the reality. But the truth is, like what we're talking about, is that when you do set an intention and when you raise your vibration and when you are able to say, these are the things that I want, I'd like to try these things sexually. This is what I'm looking for in a relationship. And being specific and open, then that you're going to be able to much more easily attract that because you've asked for it. And I never gave myself permission to ask for what I wanted before. I
yes, I
just was
agree.
like, I'm just rolling with it.
Yeah,
Oh, you're going to do this?
yep,
Okay. I had
yep,
sex with people I didn't want to. I did things I didn't want to do sexually
yeah.
sometimes because I felt like, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings, or, I'm being a bad gay. Like,
That was always
how
the
can
worst,
somebody
though.
else can just have sex so easily?
It was always the worst of going along with it just to make the
Yeah.
other person happy, even though you weren't in it, and not being able to just say, hey, you know what? Like, this isn't working for me because of this reason. And it's not because of you. It's literally because it's just not what I need right now. Or but just going along with it. And I would always feel like this pressure to have to go along with it. And I don't do that anymore.
It's so
And the,
good,
and
John.
the thing I like about intention setting is that I'll tell people afterwards, like, hey, like after like we're like laughing or like saying that was pretty amazing, and like I'm like, oh, I set an intention, and they fully see that I have an altar in my room with candles and just different objects of things that It's just a space where I go to meditate, where I bring things where to do like a gratitude meditation. I'm pretty much an open book, and it's not like forcing my spirituality on anybody, but it just shows people that, yeah, this is a part of my life and that's a part of our connection. And people are curious, people are curious. And I think that that's a really great, another way of like, in a way, it's like being of service to your fellow human being, like,
Yeah. By being
uh,
yourself, by
by being
expressing
yourself,
yourself.
fully being
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah,
It
absolutely.
gives them permission to be themselves too. And it is amazing how infectious it is. And look, what we were talking about with vulnerability, that when I talk to somebody about being sexually abused by the priest, a lot of times I can just feel them just opening up and being like, oh my gosh, we're in a space that it's okay to talk about something like that.
Hmm.
Whereas normally in life, where we feel egoically challenged and defensive, sort of like that vulnerability is going to crush me. They're going to have something on me. They're going to, I'm going to lose leverage if I'm vulnerable. But it's just the opposite of that. Wouldn't you agree? There's such
I
power
think
in it.
so.
Even if they walk
Yeah.
away and they learn the secret about me, it's like it's not a secret. I'm sharing it because it's a truth of my experience, and I've done the work around it, and I'm okay with it. I'm not afraid that you're going to use it against me. I'm not afraid, and I think that that's what happens in relationships, that we're sort of like holding our cards close sometimes as gay
Yeah,
men,
absolutely.
and
And good for
and there's
you as
sort
part
of
of your
like,
healing.
yeah,
Yeah, and good for you as a
it's
part of
made
your
it so much
healing to
easier.
not continue being a victim of that situation, right, in your
Yeah.
past, and being able to talk openly about it. It's not all of you, 100% of total of who David is, but it's a part of you. It's helped shape and color your experience and who you are. I think sharing that personally, I think sharing that kind of information to me, when I see that, it allows me to have more compassion for that person, more empathy for that person, makes me more curious about their experiences because they can teach
Oh
me
yeah.
something that I don't know about it, you know, or share some similarities.